Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to today's video about a very exciting transit happening in the sky. It's Neptune going into Aries. Now, I'm going to tell you the dates, but first you need to know that in this video, we're going to go through all of the different signs from Aries all the way through to Pisces, and you can watch your sun, moon, and rising. If you love Neptune and you want to know more about Neptune, once you get done with this video, you should check out my video on Neptune through the houses. That one is also really good to understand where Neptune is placed in your chart natally. Now, today we're talking about the effect of Neptune moving into a new sign, which is kind of a big deal, right? Because Neptune actually, I think it's 14 years. Let me check that. Yeah, every 14 years roughly. So throughout our lives, we don't get that many of these Neptune changing signs moments. And because Neptune is one of the planets that, there's 12 signs, 14 years, we don't live to see Neptune come back to where it started unless, somebody out there, makes us live way longer. But as of now, we don't, like, every Neptune transit we have is once in a lifetime because we don't have the cycles like we would other planets, even Saturn, where we can look back and see what happened 28 years ago when this happened. So that's one of the lovely, elusive, beautiful things about Neptune and the outer planets is that once they that once they do their thing, it's not like you can never once in a lifetime moments, even the ones that are tragic. And I know I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's tragedy, but I know for myself that there have been certain times in life where certain pain points actually opened me up to be more receptive to certain feelings, and a certain amount of grace. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. So today what we're doing is we're going through what this transit means for all the signs of the zodiac from Aries to Pisces. And happy eclipse, happy solar eclipse. How are you guys doing with the energies? Let me know in the comments, in the chat. I would love to hear how you're feeling with it, with the energies, because the eclipse just happened. So even like we'll just update to now. The moon is still only a few degrees away from where the sun was when the eclipse happened. So it's fresh. Although, don't be all scared of eclipses or anything. Eclipses are important and they manifest important things, but they're not, they're not, they're not the worst thing in the world always, right? Like we're actually always under the influence of an eclipse. So if you want to know more about the eclipse, watch my video on the solar eclipse and watch the lunar eclipse for your sun, moon, and rising. So if you're not busy this weekend, seriously, binge watching this channel is a great idea. Even if you've seen them already, because sometimes when the thing becomes more current, the energy, it'll resonate better, right? Maybe something happens today or in the next couple of days that you weren't thinking about 2 weeks ago when the lunar eclipse happened. So that being said, a couple announcements. Well, one announcement, and that is I have a sale on readings. There is a sale, and today is the last day to get 50% off of your reading with me. So if you want to book a Zoom call, if you've been wanting to, or you just saw this and it feels like it's the right timing, then now is your moment. Now is your moment because today is the last day. As of tomorrow, that sale will be ending, and then it will go up to my regular price. So that being said, if you want to get in on that, I did put a link in the chat, and there is also a link in the description for that. Now let's get into, we're going to talk for a couple minutes here about just Neptune, and then we're going to get into the Neptune transit into Aries for each sign of the zodiac. And also what I try to do now is put these captions up for the signs so you can see whenever that caption is there, then I'm on that sign. although sometimes I forget. So if you notice that, just that's how it is. That's how it's going to be. Um, but also, then sometimes people will put the timestamp in the comments. So if you can't find the timestamp, just scroll through the video and find the sign that you're looking for. You can find it. All right. So Neptune. Neptune is entering Aries. Now, one thing to know about this transit is it's not the complete end. And what I mean by that is Neptune is entering Aries for the first time ever. It's going to be a totally new energy than we've ever experienced. At least, all the people that are alive today have never experienced Neptune in Aries before. And so that is a phenomenon, right? It's a phenomenon when we have these energies that are new to us. And so Neptune goes into Aries, but it doesn't stay there. So that's what you need to know, is that Neptune will actually go back into Pisces this year on October 22nd. And then in 2026 is when Neptune enters Aries for good, right? It's in there and it's not coming back out. Actually, I didn't look that up, so that could be wrong. Shoot. Let me check. Let me just zip through it and check, because let's see if it goes back again in 2025. Yeah, it does. It does. So actually, no, I knew that. Oh my God, what am I doing? 2026. We're just going to look at 2026 and see if when Neptune retrogrades, it goes back into Pisces. Does it? Does it? I don't think so. No. So yeah, it will be in Aries for good then. Wow. Okay. So what does that mean? It just means that, I mean, it's important to know when a planet, the outer planets, this is just kind of how they work. They move forward and they retrograde, right? Because they're retrograde half the year. So they kind of make this back and forth motion as they go forward through the zodiac. It would be important to pay attention to, and we'll get into the specifics when I go through the signs, to if you get clarity in your Pisces house when this changes, because that's what I think, that's what I expect. So either way, regardless of how this affects you, just know that when Neptune goes into Aries, it won't be final until next year. Now, another thing to know is, who is this going to affect the most? And to know that, we need to consider the degrees. So when Neptune enters Aries, it's going to be at 0 degrees, then it's going to go to 1. So we're talking about people who have planets, personal planets, sun, moon, or rising, Mercury, Venus, or Mars, in the early degrees of cardinal signs. That's going to be Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, or Libra. So if you have anything, your rising, your sun, your moon, Mercury, Venus, or Mars, between 0 and 5, 6 degrees of any of those signs, you will feel it the most. Now, the second set of signs that might feel it are going to be the trine, which is people who have planets from 0 to 6 degrees of Sagittarius or Leo are also going to feel it, because Neptune will be trining those planets. And the last set of people that will feel it are going to be the sextile, and that's going to be Gemini, or wait, can I do it? Yeah, Gemini or Aquarius. So if you have any of those planets I said from 0 to 6 degrees of Gemini or 0 to 6 degrees of Aquarius, Neptune will be sextiling those planets. Not as strong of an energy, but still an aspect. And if you're wondering, why don't we count the quincunx? Why don't we count the semi-sextile? For this, I'm just going through the classical aspects. But I don't want to get into all that boring shit right now. We want to talk about what it means. So I'm going to check on the chat and see if anyone is. Okay, let me see why. Thank you, Maris. Let me see why. And if anyone else is here, let us know. Okay, it worked for me, so I'll just type it again. By itself. So hopefully that works. Thank you for letting me know about that. Okay. So okay, so sorry I got distracted by that. I'm checking the comments here, and Sandy's saying I have Venus at 2 degrees and I am something rising. Leo? Cancer? I'm old, I can't see that. Cancer, yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And another thing that I should say about will it affect you the most? Those who have planets actually in Aries, okay? In Aries, 0 to 5 degrees of Aries, that's the strongest. The conjunction is the strongest of all the aspects. So that was another thing. Now, when it comes to Neptune, what Neptune does when it transits is sometimes it will make that area of life kind of confusing. It can dissolve or distort. It can make it harder to figure out what's really going on. You can be more inspired and more connected to the greater vision, but have a harder time carrying it out, harder time knowing what grounded steps to take in the physical world. And that's what it can do. So let's go ahead. I think now is a good time to go into what it means in all the different signs. So I'm just getting our little chart to the right day. Oh, this is happening tomorrow, by the way, happening on the 30th of March, 2025. So let me get it onto Aries. Okay. Oh, hey, Butterfly Lady. Hey, Sandy. Hey, Tracy. I don't know how you guys feel about Neptune, but I will say, I'm ready for it to get off of my fucking moon, my descendant, and for Saturn to get out of there too. I already have like a little more Neptune than a person would actually need. And so I don't like Neptune. I do not like Neptune at all. It's so confusing. I just want to be able to have clarity. Okay, anyway, that rant over. The thing is, like, on this channel, we keep it real. So if you're not enjoying a transit, you can just be real like that. We do not have to always gaslight everything into toxic positivity. I think it's fine to look on the bright side and see what we can do with Neptune, right? Like if you're in a Neptune Sun transit, for example, then you can change your identity. It'll be hard to figure out who you are. What you used to identify yourself as might change. It might be different. It might feel like it slips away. So you can use that energy to manifest a new identity, to change, because there's already that changing element. So that's what I mean when I say we can work with the energies, but it's okay if you're not enjoying it. I've had plenty of transits that I did not enjoy. So all right, so let's go ahead. We're going to start with Aries. I'm going to get the caption here, and we're going to talk about what Neptune means here. So first of all, for Aries, Neptune is leaving your 12th house. So Neptune in the 12th house can make it really nice to get into like dreamy, philosophical conversations with yourself, to connect with your spirit guides. It kind of dissolves walls, and the 12th house is a very undefined place. It's about places of isolation. It's about getting quiet or recovery. So depending on what Neptune was doing there, this can feel like a relief to you. But I do think because it's going from the 12th to the 1st, Aries, this is going to be probably a more felt energy. Whereas Neptune can kind of hide out in the 12th house. You don't necessarily know it's there. But when it's in that first house of you, your body, your identity, your personality, your character can become more Neptunian. So some ways that could manifest is doing Neptunian things like the arts and film or aesthetic, like a new aesthetic or deception, right? Like, which I think of movies, right? Where it's like the aesthetic of a movie is not real, but it looks fucking cool. Or music that takes you to another vibe. But it's like Neptune is a vibe. So when Neptune goes into your first house, you can be a vibe. You can be more vibey. You can be more compassionate. The edges between you and other people can be more blurry, so that can be a challenge sometimes. Aries normally don't have a problem doing what the fuck they want or like, cutting through the bullshit, right? Aries normally are, at least to some degree, able to assert themselves, able to take action, able to initiate. Neptune could cause a little bit of confusion or soften that a bit. Now, for some Aries, that will be the perfect mix of when, I think of like, let's say someone's an Aries and they're a boss. Well, Neptune there in the first house might make it easier to be more receptive to your employees and, like take in energy from them and listen to them and, be more, again, receptive. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but if you need to do the Aries thing and provoke something or like initiate or what's the word, make an impact in some way, Neptune might make that journey of doing that a little bit softer, and that could be good or bad. Okay, so that is the beginning of this. Now, other things with Neptune in the first, because the first house rules your personality. So this is a 14-year transit. Okay. So you're not going to feel this every single day for 14 years being like some huge thing. It'll be stronger for Aries when it hits your, whatever you have in Aries. So if you're an Aries sun, when it hits your sun, if you're an Aries moon, when it hits your moon, and if you're an Aries rising, when it hits your rising. That could be in 12 years though. Depends on the degree. If your sun, moon, or rising are early in Aries, then it's like, this is going to probably affect your personality. It'll make you more compassionate. It'll make you more receptive. It'll make you more yielding. And it could make you more like psychological, spiritual, or subconscious things become a part of your identity. And that could be something like your video game persona becomes more like you tell people you're playing this video game. Or it could be like you've been doing this psychic work and now you're coming out as that. Or it could be like, you have this certain mental health thing that you deal with. I'm not diagnosing that. And now you're like ready to tell people about those struggles. Or it could also be, let's say you studied with monks or something, or you did some kind of training in your own subconscious mind or psychic stuff or psychological things. Maybe now that becomes more of a part of your identity because it is the modern ruler of your 12th house. So that's one possibility. Overall, though, what I see for Aries is more compassion, and the way Neptune influences your personality might depend. Like some Aries, it might be some compassionate cause that you care more about that's just more important right now and more something you are championing and becoming known for in a way. But it could also be like you become more artistic. I meant to say artistic. um, artistic, because that Neptune energy is things we can get lost in, like music and dancing and other things where once you get into the flow, the potential to get into more of a flow state is here as well during this time. Not that anyone can do that anytime, but still, that's one way Neptune can show up. And it might soften, because for all of us, Neptune can soften our desire to fight when it's in Aries, because Aries is the warrior, right? Aries is a part of us. It's like, I'm going to fight for this. This is worth fighting for. And Neptune is like, actually, that's not very spiritual. Or, sometimes Neptune and Aries, or especially when Neptune's connected to Mars, we can find that it softens the person's anger and it actually makes you think they're not angry when they are. And so it's like, oh, this person is the nicest person in the world. But then you get to know them and you realize they're just not showing that side of themselves. And that's where like the delusional or the potential for Neptune to deceive, because for people to think you're not angry might not be the worst form of deception. It might be okay. It might have its benefits, but that can be another way that Neptune shows up. Neptune, again, is very compassionate, very caring, very yielding, and very, connected. So this is a 14-year period, right? Aside from when Neptune goes back into Pisces, where Aries might really find that they're bringing their dreams into reality, or maybe some of your dreams, or some of your subconscious motivations start to inform your life. Now, for some Aries, and this is only true if this has already happened, if in the last 14 years there was some kind of grief or loss to be processed emotionally, and again, this is only true if it already happened, then maybe now that experience of overcoming that and the work that Aries did in the past 14 years to process emotions, to allow themselves to feel all their feelings. It's not like you can't feel anymore, but Neptune's not there making that easier. So that could actually be good or bad, right? It have a positive effect of now you can just go achieve your dreams or work toward your dreams. I do think in general, with Neptune in the first house, one of the biggest challenges is that Neptune can make you a little bit like you're on a windy path, and having it be the first house, that's like what you're trying to accomplish, what you're doing. First house transits represent life changes. So Neptune transiting that first house could be a life change where you become more compassionate. Think about when people have kids and they're like, they sometimes they become more selfless, right? Because it's like, I have a greater cause now. And that can come through a child. It can come other ways. But some Aries might have this too, where there's like this greater mission, or there's this sense of something worth fighting for, like that. So that's what I have for Aries. We will go on to the next sign. I'm going to check the comments though here. Yeah, okay. So Sandy is saying your sun has Neptune in Aries, or sun has Aries at 1 degree. I don't know. Sorry. Your sun has his sun in Aries and Mercury at 2. Ooh, interesting. That would make sense. That would make sense that he would have them right by each other. Butterfly Lady has Neptune and Scorpio. Rebecca at Saturn 10 degrees of Aries. That's okay that you're not going to be affected by that for a long time because it's too far. Like years and years. It'll affect you, but not like strong. Maybe I should do Neptune's transit over the planets. I should do that for a video. Sandy says Neptune moved through the 9th and I've got my midheaven in Pisces at 22. I feel like I was wondering forever. Yes. Okay. Yes. That is definitely something I see with people, is when Neptune is either on their midheaven, or it is in their 10th house, or it is making aspect to the 10th house ruler. They are like, I want to do something else for a living. They're really inspired, but lost, that feeling like, I don't know if I'm on the right path. And sometimes they're on the exact right path. That's what sucks about Neptune. Paula says Aries are already a vibe. And Edgar says hi from Chihuahua. Hello, Edgar. And then, yes, Neptune is Scorpio. You must have checked. Okay, great. Let me see if there's anything else here. Okay, so we're good for that. Let's go on now to our Tauruses. All right, so for our Tauruses, we have got Neptune. Neptune is entering that 12th house of the subconscious mind, of psychology, spiritual isolation, recovery. And it's leaving the 11th house. Now, I kind of like Neptune in the 11th for Aries in the sense, or for Taurus, I'm sorry, in the sense that it can make friendship easier but more confusing to navigate. It can bring this, Neptune's all about dreams, and the 11th house is like our hopes and dreams. So you could have felt more inspiration in the last 14 years. Now, if you're like, no, that's not me, then that's okay. Because it does have different effects. Some people feel more inspired with Neptune. Some people feel more numbed by Neptune. But Neptune going into the 12th will negate some of the challenging effects of Neptune. Neptune leaving the sign of its rulership will also negate some of the potential negatives. So if Taurus have been feeling like, I don't know if I'm on the right track to achieve my dreams, or I feel like I'm trying, but I don't know if I'm going the right way, or if Taurus have had any kind of confusing dynamics in communities or in relationships with groups of people, Neptune going into Aries could quell some of that and relieve some of that, because it could have been causing that influence. Now, the positive influences, though, of Neptune leaving that 11th house is you might be coming out of a time, Taurus, where you had like hippie friends, or all the spiritual friends, or all the Sedona friends, It doesn't mean you aren't going to anymore, but when Neptune not there, maybe that influencing your life becomes a little bit less strong. And because Neptune's the modern ruler of the 11th house, and it's going into the 12th very private house, community becomes private. So what does that mean? Well, maybe you see your friends more one-on-one now and not as much in groups. Maybe there is some aspect of your group life that becomes more private. So I think of someone who maybe goes a 12-step program where their social life is like now anonymous, or, something else along those lines. It doesn't mean you don't have a social life, but it might revolve around, it might have privacy have something to do with it, which, doesn't make sense, but it can, right? Your social life can be top secret, for whatever reason. You could get into a community. Actually, some Tauruses could actually get into a community where it's like what is said here stays here, just like 12-step programs, or like, I don't know, I think of like what are they called? Like the Knights Templar, the freaking, what are they called? I don't remember what they're called. It starts with an F. These secret societies, whatever they're called, I don't know. You become a member of a secret society. And it could be something like you join a coven, or, you meet some friends who do astrology or magic, and they're like, oh yeah, we meet and we do seances, but like, you can't tell nobody, right? Like it could be anything. I know some of you watching this, right? It could be anything. Now for some Tauruses, this could also be about like paranormal stuff. If you're into that, I'm not super into that, but some of you guys might be, where Neptune does rule ghosts. So having ghosts in the 12th house, I'm not going to predict you're all haunted or anything, but I'm thinking those of you who want to pursue that topic, that might be, you're privately ghost hunting, or you're privately doing some mediumship practices or something like that. Yeah, and maybe your sense of community actually comes a little bit more from your spiritual team at this time. What Neptune in the 12th is good for on a more practical level for Tauruses is to, the 12th house being the subconscious mind, the 12th house being things we don't always want to see, the 12th house being our self-sabotage. Neptune can make that soften the ability, like, easier, right? Neptune can bring ease to an area, and the 12th house is our psychology. So the only thing though is I get the vibe here of like sedatives, and I'm not saying this is not advice, but I do get a sedative vibe from this very strongly, actually. So that might just be a couple Tauruses out there who are going to be needing that. Like maybe you have a planned surgery and you're like, yeah, I do need sedatives right now. Maybe some of you though are doing more, I want to say like ketamine type things where it's like there's a purpose of growth here and it's like it is going to sedate, but there's a positive reason. I don't want to encourage anything that's not good for you, Taurus. But now let's say that doesn't resonate either. The Neptune in the 12th can make it easier to do things like therapy, to do things like healing childhood stuff or things like that where you're choosing or doing hypnotherapy, doing things where you're choosing to dive into that subconscious mind and for the purpose of like healing or whatever, because Neptune makes it softer. Yes, Dolly, thank you. I was thinking Freemason. Yes, and thank you to everyone else who guessed Illuminati. Okay, back to Taurus though, back to the rest of this. Yeah, Neptune can also make it. The thing is with Neptune in the 12th, I can't not warn you about the potential here of like getting too checked out from reality. Okay, so if you're a Taurus and you're like, that's not really an issue, fine. But if you're a Taurus and you like to play video games a lot, or you like to, I'm just going to tell you all the things I do. No, but really, not really. Or you love smoking weed, or you love drinking, or you love doing something else that's like fantasy, or it's anything, right? Anything that is fantasy. There is the potential to get really into it, and to feel there is a potential here to have a loss of control there. Now, I don't think that most Tauruses need to worry, but that would be the downside of Neptune going through the 12th. There's a lot of upside though, because Neptune's energy matches the 12th house. The 12th house is like the ocean of our subconscious mind that will never get to the bottom of. Neptune likes the ocean. Neptune is not solid. It's, moving around and it's hard to pin down. So the downside of Neptune in a house like that is, well, when you need to pin things down, what are you going to do? Thankfully, we have other planets and other places to help us out here. But it's like good for going fishing, not good for defining what kind of fish you just caught. Okay, so apply that to your subconscious mind. That's kind of, Neptune's good for the fishing part of it. It's good for like the listening to the guided audio that's going to help the subconscious, or working with like RTT or something. But it's not always going to be perfectly suited here to help you define what you get. So yeah, that's kind of it. I think that's most of it, right? Neptune will also make us feel inspired in the area of where it's at. So for Taurus, that's your 12th house, again, of isolation. But the 12th house also has a very social component in the sense that people with strong 12th house placements, oh, my freaking thing went away. Hold on. We're still on Taurus. Sorry. People with strong 12th house placements will almost like hear the cries of the collective and want to help. They'll almost feel this invisible pull to help the suffering, right? So the 12th house is also people who have like psychic suffering or mental health suffering or addiction or anything else that's like our own self-undoing here. Anything else that's like hard for us to see. So maybe the person with mental health problems, they're not doing it to themselves necessarily, but they can't see certain things, right? It's hard to see certain things. So Neptune can again dissolve that, make it easier, or bring some kind of influence to that area. And the influence might be that Tauruses are wanting to include that in their practices, or wanting to include more of those topics in some way or another into their lives. Maybe you're seeing some people suffer and you want to help them. Maybe you're connecting to society in that way. There's a strong feeling for Taurus of connecting to society when we have so many planets right now in the 11th house of society. Saturn being the problems or the burdens. Neptune Also dealing with kind of burdens and like suffering in a way. But in that 12th house where it's more about contemplating it or understanding it or quietly helping, right? Quietly helping those with silent suffering in a way that maybe no one else can see. Okay, so there's a lot of positive potential here. And also, one of the other positive things about this transit, again, that I like for Taurus, is that if you had too much Neptune going on, if you had, too much, I want to help everybody, but I don't know how energy, Neptune going into the 12th will help just quell that slightly. And using this next 14 years of Neptune for your highest potential might look like exploring your subconscious mind, developing a spiritual practice of something very zen or something very, even something active, like qigong or something, or pranic healing or something where you're taking that spiritual thing and doing motions and physically moving the body with it. That's another possibility here too of how to work with this energy. Okay, so that is what I have for Taurus. And we are going to go on to our next sign, which is our Geminis. Okay. So let's go on to Geminis. Let me get our things here. We're on Gemini and we're doing Neptune's transit into Aries. Okay, for Gemini, Neptune moves into your 11th house of friends, community, and your hopes and dreams. So Neptune going into the 11th house can put you in touch with Neptunian communities for basically the next 14 years. Keeping in mind, Neptune comes back into Pisces this October and then it will return again. So that could be cool, man. That could be a vibe. That can be, you're going to these ecstatic dance things. This could be artists, right? And art, beauty, really cool scenes, really cool restaurants with lighting and stuff, really cool places like that where you step into it and it's its own complete vibe. You know what I just thought of? There's like an ice bar in Vegas. I'm here, but I haven't been to it. I think of stuff like that where it's like you go in there and it's totally different than the surroundings. But for Geminis, this can also be the people you meet in community. So some Geminis could be dealing with sick people, like especially if your profession makes sense with that. Like some Geminis might be counselors and you're seeing people who are suffering and you're helping them. Or maybe you're a nurse or something else like that. And you're helping suffering people. But it could also be like you're a Gemini and you have your own business and you help people who are like super broke to make money or something, right? So there can just be this infusion of compassion or suffering or helping those less fortunate into that 11th house of community. Some Geminis might be like, yeah, I do need to help people who are less fortunate than me. I'm in a place where in my career where I can do that. Others, it might just be like, you're exposed to more suffering through your work. Maybe you work for like an insurance company and you're like, all these people aren't getting coverage. It could be anything. But there can also be Neptune in the 11th can also be a very inspiring transit where it can put you in this situation where you're really connected to the vision of your dreams, your hopes and dreams in life. And there's this visionary and possibly even like magical, sort of lovely ideal, right? Because Neptune represents the ideal, but it does not represent the real. So what that could be for some Geminis is Neptune being in the 11th being like online communities where it's you're seeing the person's avatar, right? What they want you to see and what, their fake beautiful image. And, really they don't look like that. Or it could also be, how could this also be is maybe you do more things where people are, I think of, what I think of is like, and just take this to what resonates in your life. This won't be everyone. These metaphors aren't really exactly what will happen. It's the metaphor of what's happening. And I think of like those Renaissance fairs where people dress up like different characters and stuff. I have not been to one, but it's like they don't look like that. Even Halloween, like we don't really look like that, right? So it's like playing a character, projecting an image, or being connected to communities where that deception is part of the deal. This could also be like where people go to parties where it's like everyone's super, super dressed up to where it's like it has a vibe. So there's that. Now, there's other stuff with Neptune here besides just connecting with people who aren't real. It can also be connecting with people who are Neptunian in other ways, like maybe they are healers or psychics or people who like smoking weed or, anyone who's super go with the flow, chill. You could just make some chill friends and that could be really nice. Like that's one good possible thing for this transit for Gemini is connecting with people who are super easygoing and go with the flow. It could also be what you're doing socially. You're going to concerts where everyone's getting stoned. You're going to Zen Buddhism things too, because Neptune can also be like that Zen side of Buddhist philosophy of like we're I'm probably not going to say this perfectly, but by emptying the mind, it becomes free of the suffering that we cause ourselves, right? Because like the idea that like we suffer twice, once when the event happens, and then again when we tell ourselves the story, right? So releasing suffering, going to temples and stuff, right? Where we see like monks or we see like, again, sort of this like meaningful experience could also be part of it. Neptune also rules the 10th house. You have another ruler, a traditional ruler, but the modern ruler is Neptune. So some of your work might deal with groups of people more during this phase, or it might deal with getting whatever you do out to a bigger audience or more of the masses. Like let's say you sell something and now, now Geminis are like, okay, now we need to expand our client base. And there's a focus on the group, or it could also be a focus on taking something you already do and like scaling it, kind of a thing. So that's one possibility. It's not going to be everyone. And some Geminis, it might just be like at your work, you are helping people one-on-one or doing a one-on-one thing. Now it's more of a group dynamic. It could also be like that as well. So that's what I have for Geminis. I do think that Neptune in the 11th can be really, really inspiring. And if you want more, I do have that video, Neptune through the houses, for your natal chart. So we're going to do our next sign here, which is Cancers. All right. So Cancers, Neptune is entering your 10th house. I don't love this one. The reason I don't love it is because that Neptune entering your 10th house will make you feel in touch with the ideal in your career, but it'll make it a little bit harder to focus on the next steps. And so the way to work with Neptune in the 10th is take the good part, which is that it puts you in touch with what you're inspired by, and that might not be what you're doing right now. It might be something else, but it might be what you're doing, but like in a different way. So connect with that, use it to visualize the career you want, visualize the impact you want to make on the world with the emphasis on how you want to make people feel, not on, how much money you want to make or the lifestyle you want to have, because that 10th house is really about others. It's about the world. It's about us being who the world needs us to be. Now, some Cancers with Neptune in the 10th may find that either movies, what you see on screens, or aesthetics, or putting on some kind of disguise. I don't know why the word disguise came into my head. It's not what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is like doing some kind of work where you have to present a certain way and maybe it's not who you are. And that the extreme of that would be like you're going to be Mickey Mouse, where you get to dress up as a character and you are not you. Okay, so some cancers, this might show up in a totally different way where you have to act like you are, maybe you're at a medical establishment and you have to act like you believe a certain set of things that maybe you don't really feel like is true for you, but you just have to present a certain way. So there's a little bit of that, a little bit of maybe tapping into the deception from your own side of like, I need to come across this way in order to get to the next step in my career. So this is what I have to do. And some of you, it might not be a bad thing. It might just be that's the next step in your journey right now. There is also the fact that Neptune rules your ninth house. It's the modern ruler of your ninth house. So that's going to be taking spiritual things or taking things you know deeply, and that those things that you're educated about or that you've studied deeply, or even psychological or spiritual things, even astrology can come in here, could influence your career in some way. Other things about Neptune in the 10th, again, the biggest thing here is like you could really have a big dream for your career, but you'll have to kind of think a little bit harder to figure out if that dream is going to be like really for you. Because you're a Cancer rising, though, Neptune will square your ascendant at some point during this 14-year cycle. So if you're an early degree Cancer rising, like 0 through 5, then this transit's going to affect you a lot, and it might make you feel kind of confused about your role. That's one of the challenges with Neptune in the 10th is confusion about your role, confusion about what am I supposed to be doing right now? And it could be like, I don't know, they didn't train me on this job, I'm just guessing. Could be something like that where you're confused about your role like that. Or it could be like a more deeper philosophical confusion about your role in life and how meaningful your life is and what you're supposed to be doing. Your role in life can become more compassionate, softer, more informed by spirituality or beliefs or the law. And this transit is 14 years, so you have a little while of this continuing to go on. I don't think this is the worst transit ever. I personally don't love it when Neptune gets into these houses that are like real life shit, because Neptune makes you not want to deal with real life. And that is one of the problems with Neptune is it's what we don't want to deal with. It's what we want to avoid. It's what we want to be easy. And sometimes it will be easy, but sometimes it will make it easier for us to stop focusing on that thing. So Cancers, with Neptune going into that 10th house, more of the advice here is don't let your career ambitions and aspirations just melt away with this transit. You will have to focus more. You'll get distracted and you'll have to bring yourself back to focus in this area, and that's okay. Again, Neptune in the 10th can be really good for creating a certain image that isn't reality, right? And think of things where that's like positive, like let's say you're doing like people who make commercials for those products that they like use camera work and stuff to make it look so fucking cool, right? So that kind of deception doesn't always have to be evil. It's sort of like giving things a certain look or appeal or coming across a certain way, again, because this is what your career needs from you. Some Cancers might have more compassion or more sick people or more topics related to healing that come up related to their life in general or their work specifically. That can just be part of the deal during this season of life. But to work with this one, Neptune in the 10th, definitely tap into the vision of what you want, and don't forget though, don't forget to take the steps toward it, right? And when Neptune, if your midheaven is also in Aries, if you're a Cancer rising, it might be or it might not be. When Neptune hits the midheaven, this is usually a time where you're going to feel the most unsure about your next steps and also connected to something better and something probably a bit easier. So again, use that time to listen to yourself. If something feels like it could be so much easier, listen to that part of you during this transit. Because that can be, sometimes it can bring you into a flow. So for some Cancers, especially if you've been doing a lot of prep work for your career and stuff, this might be a time where you start getting into a flow with it. And that's like the highest potential of this one, is like the potential to have kind of a flow state when it comes to what you're doing. So I like that for you, Cancer. I think that's a good place to stop for Cancer. So we'll go on now to our Leos. So this will be for Leo, Sun, Moon, or Rising. So for Leo's, Neptune in Aries. Neptune enters the ninth house where I kind of think Neptune's all right here, because the ninth house is very lofty and spiritual and visionary. So Neptune matches that energy very well. What it doesn't help you with, though, is clarity on your path to God or your spiritual path or your purpose. So Leos might feel more like this nebulous feeling, like I really want to live out my purpose, but there's not a lot of like clear next steps for how to do that. Leos might feel more compassion toward people who are like spiritual people or people who have a certain belief system. Leos might also feel a little bit unsure about their next steps related to ninth house topics, like publishing something, like like publishing, spirituality, astrology. Now, for some, it's more like you're in a flow state. So like maybe some Leos out there are like, actually, I just started writing and it's just flowing out of me. If that's the case, great. But usually it's going to be, the third house is usually more about the writing side. So let me backtrack on that for a second. The ninth house, Neptune, is more about the publishing side. So we're going to see the potential for, if you are a Leo trying to publish something right now, Neptune here could make it more unclear. Like, did I submit it properly or whatever, right? Make things a little bit more unclear when it comes to the next steps to take to publish. It doesn't mean you can't. You could publish something very spiritual or something fantasy related or something that has to do with meditating or something like that. And then what else? Neptune in the ninth, I just totally lost my train of thought. It is also good for intuition. Okay, intuition development. Neptune's been going through your eighth house where it can do that too. And in the ninth house, it's like that knowing, right? This inner knowing. But you've got to make sure though with Neptune, because Neptune, it's like it has a psychic antenna and this energetic antenna, but it also we can antenna to things that are like we don't want, right? We can project, or not even project, receive, like have this energetic receptivity to things we don't want to really be that energetically receptive to. So that's the thing to kind of the advice here for Leos is like tune the antenna, tune that psychic antenna, consciously set intentions for what you want to receive when it comes to your intuition, your spiritual path, your connection to your spirit guides, your ability to do readings if you're someone who does readings, especially because this is your eighth house ruler in the ninth. A very good time for Leos in the next 14 years to learn astrology, to practice mediumship, to practice tarot, to do any other kind of system like that combines, especially if it's something that combines a set of established ordered rules, or not even rules, but like a framework, right? Because the ninth house, when it comes to spiritual stuff, is more the stuff that has a framework, the stuff that has like a, that's how I see it. And the eighth house to me is more like things that are beyond the veil. So like the eighth house would be straight up someone who's like, I am psychic, I'm just getting information, and they're just getting it. Right? Whereas the ninth house might be more like someone who's learned the history of the tarot cards and the symbolism, and they can read it for that reason. Not that they can't overlap, but there's that. Now, the ninth house is also opposite the third. So Neptune being opposite the third is kind of like we're going to have inspiration or compassion for things that are far away. So far off dreams, big books, big spiritual belief systems, not a little 2-minute meditation, but like a 2-hour meditation, a 2-week meditation, a 2-week trip overseas where you fast for the whole time and meditate or something, things like this. Now, Neptune in the ninth can also affect your beliefs for Leos. One way is like just spirituality might become more of an important part of life. You might be more receptive to other people's belief systems and more want to absorb new things, or just you can absorb. That is the word, absorbing beliefs. Now, are you going to absorb the beliefs you want? Maybe this would be a time, this 14-year period, where you are consciously, not saying you aren't doing this. It might be more important though now to consciously choose what beliefs you want to absorb and what you don't. And what, being around those people who believe what you want to believe, things like that. I do think of Neptune in the ninth as a Buddhist influence, or it's like a spiritual practice that is easy, right? Walking meditation. Things where you are not necessarily, they're not complicated. There's not a bunch of rules. Neptune dissolves the strict, rigid stuff. So belief systems that are open and free and let people be themselves, and maybe even are so wide open that it's like, you can have any set, like, I almost feel like, I don't want to say this wrong. Let me try to say this right. Very, very, very open belief systems. Like, I think of like a commune, or I think of like, I don't know, certain groups of people that are like, oh yeah, we like being naked all the time. Like normal structures, we're so open that some of the normal structures, the mainstream structures, we don't do that shit. We don't drive cars here, just like very, very open communities, or traveling to communities like this that are more like, maybe even going to like, I imagine going to like a tribe in Africa where they don't really wear clothes, things like that, where we have this very open, very free, very uninhibited way of believing. So that could affect you in many different ways. Okay, you might not be studying with this. You might be going somewhere. You might be just, visualizing, working on your intuition, listening to your intuition. This is going to be really strong though for Leos with your rising between 0 and 5 degrees. So keep that in mind as well, or your sun or moon, whatever's here. So keep that in mind as well. But I do think, especially, now, right now at the moment of this reading, tomorrow actually, when Neptune is here, the sun is also here. So the sun is you. So I would pay attention to what spiritual or belief oriented or psychic things kind of open up here this week or couple weeks, where Neptune ingresses into Aries, because you might get a foreshadowing of the energy that might become stronger for you during this time. And the only caveat I'm going to say is try not to join a cult, Leo. And I say that because Neptune does have that potential to deceive, right? So it's easy to think that spiritual guru that's trying to get you to drink the Kool-Aid is really good, but maybe they're actually not. So that's the only thing I would question really during this transit, is like not getting into some super crazy, hooked into some cult that makes you think they're better than they are, because that is one actual possibility here, is being deceived by a spiritual guru or teacher usually. Okay, so it doesn't mean you can't learn stuff. You could meet like a Reiki teacher who's just so super good that it's amazing, and that Neptune influences the energy just flows. So don't be scared of that one. Okay, let's go to our next one, which is going to be Virgos. For Virgo, sun, moon, and rising, Neptune is going to be, let's get you to that sign. Okay, so Neptune is going to be entering the 8th house, which means it's getting out of that 7th house, where it could have caused some positive and negative things. It could have had the effect of really spiritual friends, or having this ideal with your relationships in general, all relationships, of what you want the ideal to be, but maybe a harder time figuring out what the real next step is. So it's like, oh, I want all these friends to be like this, but I don't know how to make them, or like something like that. Neptune being in the 7th could have made you more open to new people, But you could have met more people during this time, especially the last, the last couple years or so, that maybe are trying to deceive you, or maybe are like scammers, or I don't know. Like, I have a Virgo rising too, you guys, and I have met a lot of people in the last few years who are presenting a certain way and they're not fucking that way. They're just trying to screw you or scam you, or doing things that are not like not good. And I'm not like a victim of it, but it's definitely with Virgo rising or sun and moon, that seventh house being Pisces, there is a tendency to let anyone in and then later be like, oh, wait, this wasn't a good person to have in there in my life, and to realize later to be very open and unyielding at the start when you meet people. Okay, so then what is happening when Neptune moves into the eighth? Well, if you had even like contracts with people or connections with other people that were hard to understand, or like, I mean, I keep thinking to myself here, but like, let's just say you start working a temp job and you think there's going to be insurance and then there isn't, like something like that could happen where the other person isn't being clear. So there's more of a need to be discerning and really get clear on what's being committed to here. If that has been a challenge lately, Virgo, then Neptune moving into the eighth might bring a little bit of relief there as far as that tendency to be deceived, right? And why are we deceived? Because sometimes we just want it to be how we want it to be, and we didn't ask the questions we should have asked, right? Myself included in that. So that can help. That can be a helpful influence to have Neptune getting out of that seventh house. Also because the seventh house is a angular house, so it's stronger. And, Neptune in Pisces has been a very strong influence. So that can be a positive thing if you have felt confused, unsure about your next steps with friendships or with agreements with people or your significant other. If you have felt like, oh, I really want a partner like this, and you're single and you're like, but I don't know how to get one. Neptune moving out of that house might actually help relieve some of that. And with Saturn still there, you can be a lot more realistic, and that can help in relationships. Neptune can hurt relationships, okay, when it's in the seventh house. Because what happens during this transit is, and I know we're talking about the past, but the shift is going to be, I think, big for you guys. What can happen here is you can be disappointed, man. You can be really let down by people because maybe you thought they were someone they weren't. You can have someone on a pedestal and they just fall off the pedestal, down, 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 down. You can go into a relationship with all these hopes, and you can realize none of those things happened. You can realize that your friends who you thought were your friends are just not who you thought they were. That can be the challenging side of Neptune going through the seventh, is having to come to terms with any way that you may have over idealized that Pisces energy of just believing too much, right? You can believe too much in people. And that can be a harsh reality. And if you've been going through that, this transit is like, we're not fully out of it because Neptune will come back into Pisces in October, but we're getting like, this will be a little break from whatever influence, if Neptune did have that on you, it would have had. Now, when Neptune goes into the eighth, well, first of all, you're going to be more, let me see. You might be more psychic. You might have more psychic dreams. You might have an easier time connecting to your intuition. You might find that you take interest in occult topics, right? Neptune in the eighth is very much mediumship, ghosts, the other side, just downloading intuitive information, psychic visions, psychic abilities. The subconscious mind's a little bit in the eighth. I think it's also in the 12th, but psychology in general, Neptune going through the eighth. If you want to heal, okay, if you want to resolve some kind of psychological thing, this is not advice, But sometimes Neptune will make the thing easier. Okay, so I said this for those with Neptune in the 12th as well. And that is that it can have this numbing ability, and that numbing ability can be good for healing sometimes. Sometimes the numbing is like this spoonful of sugar that helps you face the pain or something. I know this is getting kind of negative, but Neptune in the 8th could be you have this influence, healing influence that makes it easier to deal with maybe past crises. But sometimes the 8th house isn't about you. So some Virgos, this Neptune in the 8th might not be your Neptunian shit going on. It could be your friends bring you their psychic traumas or your clients bring you their psychic traumas, and they're like, yeah, I was doing this. When people have they go to someone for healing and then that person just abuses them, or they do like an ayahuasca trip and like that monk is, or not even the monk, but like the person doing it is actually to steal your consciousness or whatever. Like shit like that happens sometimes. I think of that as maybe a Neptune in the 8th thing, but it's more likely that it would be somebody else coming to you with this. Okay, other people bringing you their past psychic experiences, good or bad. Good time, I think, to learn, psychic development, intuition, if that's something you want to do. Now, if you're not into that, let's talk about other stuff that this could be expressing. It may not be that for everyone, right? One person it might have to do with their psychic ability. One person it might have to do with their debt. I'm not making any promises, but Neptune can dissolve money. Now, what kind of money could Neptune dissolve? Debt. Yay, debt, but also investment money or something, and I don't think like you're all going to lose your fortunes here. But if you have investments and you're a Virgo rising, when Neptune goes into the 8th, it's possible it could have the influence of making you not want to think about that thing. That is why Neptune screws us, because it makes us not want to think about it. And when we don't think about it, we don't deal with it. And the 8th house is a money house, and we got to deal with it, right? We don't change. Money is one of those topics that it doesn't change unless we change it. And with Neptune in the 8th, it's like, there's a tendency to not want to think about it. Same with Neptune in the 2nd. But with Neptune in the 8th, it's more being directed at other people's money, not the money in your bank account, but like the money you've invested, the money you're supposed to be getting from a pension or a retirement plan or a 401k or something. It's like, oh, now you don't have access to that anymore. But again, the good side could be here with debt. Another challenging side of Neptune in the 8th could be a partner's income dissolves or becomes less or something. So if you're in a relationship where the other person is paying for a bunch of stuff, it could be that. Now, if you're not dependent on other people financially, you're probably fine. But I would say, now it could also be something else more positive here with Neptune in the 8th, where it can actually make it easier to get money from other people. So I don't know how that can be used for good, but maybe if you're like selling or something, or you have clients, it might be easier to kind of tell them what they want to hear or figure out what they want to hear in order to if you're working on sales psychology or something like that, maybe. What else could this Neptune in the 8th be doing? Let me think here. It can make you more inspired to be more 8th house-like. You could feel inspired to pay off your debt. You could feel inspired to invest money. You could feel inspired to get better at accounting or something. You could feel inspired to be more psychic, be more intuitive. You could be inspired to help people psychologically, especially for those of you out there who your work might have a counseling or a therapeutic aspect to it. Those of you doing that kind of work, Neptune in the 8th could inspire you to work with people more. You could be inspired to help people suffering in a certain way, right? Because Neptune in the 8th does have that feeling of a little bit of suffering, but it also feels like we want it to be easy. So maybe some Virgos figure out how maybe you start letting people in, right? Because Neptune was here. This is what I think. Neptune was here in the 7th, making it to where everyone you meet, you're like, oh, you're like open to, more open to than you would normally be. Now Neptune's moving in the 8th, where this is about really getting to know people more deeply. So maybe some of the people you know that have been at arm's length for whatever reason now get to know you more deeply, and maybe there's an ease in connecting more deeply. Maybe there's an ease in intimacy, and part of intimacy can be sexuality. Maybe there's an ease here to connecting to what you want or need sexually, or making those kind of connections and having them go deeper. I just said that. But really, I mean, I'm just gonna change the subject now. But really, this can also be like a connection with a therapist where you get to know them more deeply and they get to know you more deeply. And it's like a positive one-on-one thing that has a positive influence because you're able to let them in. Okay. The ability to let people in. If Virgos have had any challenges with that recently, that is something I feel like Neptune can help with. It will be easier. Now, does that mean that it's easy to let in, you want them to be let in? That's the thing that you might have to actually put a little more effort into now that Neptune is in the 8th house, where it's like, oh, it's so easy to get to know these people. But are these the people you want to get to know? Are people just prying into your business? I don't know, so it's like you might have to work harder in certain cases to set boundaries, because that 8th house is the house of sharing, connecting with others. They might just be let wide in. I almost get the metaphor of like you had a lock on your door and now it's broken and now people are just going right in, just not knocking and just showing up, and you're like, oh, hey, you weren't supposed to be here right now, right? So that's just the metaphor. It's not the reality. And overall, the best thing about Neptune in the 8th is psychic development, intuition, connecting with people, really sharing with people, sharing space with people, deepening intimacy, working on trust issues, letting those go, letting people in more. And it might actually help you too with any of the it's almost like, maybe for some Virgos, if Neptune dissolved some of your friendships, now it might be like, okay, there's a few people who I'm really close to now. Maybe this is a season of life where people who maybe you knew and you connected deeply with, you just haven't been talking to, and now you're talking again or something. There's a real potential, I think, for like psychological recovery of some kind to be a part of life. It could be yours or someone else's. So that's what I have for Virgos. Let's go on now to our Libras. Okay. All right. So let me get it on to the caption for Libra. Okay, so Libras, we have Neptune entering your 7th house of relationships. So for Libras, Neptune can be creating more of a desire to have ease in relationships. And that doesn't mean you will have it, okay? Sometimes Neptune will have a dissolving effect where if certain relationships maybe have run their course, that could be a part of the thing. Some Libras might actually meet more Neptunian people. So this will be like really spiritual people. You might have a season of life, right? This 14-year period, roughly, of like going to meditation things and going to spiritual events and like, working with maybe a spiritual coach or going to Sedona and getting a psychic tour or something like that. Like there's all this spiritual connection related to other people, connecting with people through Neptunian things like spirituality, like Reiki, like meditation, like things that take you to an altered state of consciousness. And so that's one possibility here. Another possibility, again, is that you feel inspired to have your relationship be a certain way, or you feel inspired to have a certain kind of relationship, or to have the relationship you're in take a certain, just be a certain way. But the thing that Neptune will kind of make it hard to do is put that into practice, or to see what you need to do about it. The caution here with Neptune going through the seventh is you have a greater potential to be deceived by people. So I'll give you an example so that doesn't feel so scary and overwhelming. But like if you're going into a job and you don't ask a question, you're more likely to be like, oh man, I thought it was going to be like this, right? Or it's like, yeah, they don't tell you stuff. They don't tell you stuff. So like, and whether it's but deception on purpose or not, it's like if you're making contracts or you're making agreements, you got to just make sure that what you think the other person's going to want to do, they're going to want to do. Like if you're a Libra and you're getting a roommate at this time, you need to make sure they are going to pay. Like they might be telling you, oh yeah, it's $700 a month, which is not realistic in most places right now, but, and you're like, okay, cool. And then you don't find out until after you moved in that that's the whole rent, and they're not going to even pay any, you know what I mean? So shit like that, where it's like, it's not like your whole life is over because of the deception here, but just that you have to work a little harder to kind of pin people down when Neptune's in your seventh house, when they say they want to do something, because I've just gone through this transit, and it's like people have an agenda, and sometimes they don't tell you what it is. You know, you got to figure that out. And the real deception happens with Neptune in the seventh when someone projects a lie to us, but we just want to believe the fantasy. You know, that's the hard part of Neptune that I talked about with the other signs, is like Neptune's where we don't want to deal with it. So that's what you have to watch out for with the seventh house is accidentally avoiding shit related to relationships, other people, or contracts. So if you're making a contract, if you have a relationship, you can't just avoid them and then everything's fine, right? We have to deal with it. And I know Libras, you know this. You know how important relationships are. But with Neptune here, it's like the connection can dissolve if you are not feeding it, right? A relationship's like a cat. It dies if you don't feed it. So like Libras, it's just about doing what you naturally do, which is feeding the relationships that matter to you. Now, Neptune being the modern ruler of your sixth house might bring the topic of work or pets or self-development into relationships. This could be friends who are into self-development, but it could also be your partner's doing a certain thing and they're like having you do it too. And you're like both in this program where you're learning stuff about yourselves or something like that. But that's another potential here. Overall, the potential with Neptune in the seventh too is you could meet more people. You could be more yielding to people you meet. You could be more open to letting new people in. So that can be good or bad depending on where you're at with that at this moment, right? If this is a hard challenge for you where you have too many people wanting you to do shit all the time, then you might have to work harder to maintain your boundaries for personal space. But if you're like a little more isolated and you need connection, Neptune might help. But again, you kind of have to be a little more on your toes with people when Neptune's going through your seventh to make sure the image they're presenting to you is actually who they are. Like for me, I met a lot of people during this transit who I was 1000% certain were just lying about what they did for a living. It's like a cover for something else. I met a lot of people like that. You could just kind of tell they're lying. Or like I met people during this transit who were like in this multi-level marketing thing. Like when I was at Target, I would just they would just come up to me and start talking to me, and I met two of these same girls, right? Two of these different girls, and they said the same exact thing to me. I was like, well, who is programming you guys to say this shit to people? But they had like the same spiel about like, I know that I'm going off on this tangent, but they did. They had this same spiel about like, oh, I have these mentors now, and maybe someday I can put you in touch with them. Like they both said it the same way. I'm like, if you're gonna do that, you should probably have different scripts for different people because it was just so obvious. But anyway, this could show up in different forms. And I give these examples because if I just say, oh, people can deceive you, sometimes that feels a little ominous. Like, oh my God, I'm going to get totally lied to. You're only going to get lied to the degree that you're not willing to confront or deal with stuff. That is what Neptune does that's shitty to us, is that it makes us not want to deal with it. It makes us want to believe the fantasy and unwilling to look at the details of real life. So if you have a partner who's cheating on you and you don't want to believe it, Libra, well, this is going to be a shitty transit. I'm sorry, but it's true. It's like, but if you are willing to look at how someone is showing you who they really are, that's the thing, that phrase, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That's your motto for relationships for the next 14 years. It doesn't mean relationships have to only be suffering. There can be beauty. There can be lovely experiences. There can be amazing dates with beautiful vibes. There can be elevated spirituality, as Neptune being like that higher octave of Venus, of like unconditional love. But there can be some challenges there too. So that's what I see for this transit for Libras. We're going to go on now to Scorpios. All right, let's get to Scorpios here. For Scorpio, we have Neptune is entering your 6th house of your daily routine, your time, your health, and self-development, like developing skills, chores, things like that. So what will Neptune do in the 6th house? It can make you feel inspired, right, to be good at something. Now, the 6th house is a house related to work, but it's not the same as like the 10th house, where the 10th house is more about the recognition we get. The 6th house is like the unrecognized work we do, right? It's the prep work nobody sees that, trines the 10th house, supports the career, but it isn't the career, right? So it's like, like before this reading, before I do these, I usually look up the dates and stuff. It's like, I don't get anything for that, but it prepares that public image to be what it needs to be. Or like if you are someone who is a sculptor, then you had to do some sculpting, you had to learn how to sculpt things and like carve them properly, right? So Neptune in the 6th can be making you feel inspired about how to spend your time. It can fill your time with more spiritual things. It can be you bringing spiritual, meaningful things to your daily life that are habits, like spiritual habits, like feeling love in your heart in the morning, or cultivating peace, or reading a Buddhist book, or it doesn't have to be Buddhist, but I think of Buddhism for Neptune a lot because it's like it has a element of ease. So I think of like Zen Buddhism, or I think of like energy work where it's just all about pure positive light, and there's no boundaries, and there's no edges, and there's no limits to it. I think of things that don't have walls, things that are peaceful. Doing things like that in your time, spending your time with peaceful things, is one potential here. Another potential is spending your time with people who are suffering and helping others and having a heightened sense of compassion. Really, really strong possibility for Scorpios in the next 14 years. Does not mean you have to rush right out and do that if you don't want to. But it does, Neptune does tend to soften that area of life. Now, what could be the challenges here? The challenges for Neptune in the 6th could be, so the challenges for Neptune in the 6th could be if you are working on something that requires a lot of skills to be developed or time you put into the task. Neptune can make you forget about it, right? So Neptune can bring this forgetfulness to how you spend your time. I'm not saying for 14 years you're not aware of time, but if you've never had, like, Neptune puts you into a flow state, and when you're in a flow state, you don't care what time it is. So it can have a positive effect on, you're just doing things and you're just in the moment. But it can have a negative effect of, oh, now you were late because you weren't paying attention, right? So Neptune will make us not pay attention to certain things of the house. And gosh, I'm trying to think of how this could be used to a good way, because we really need to be conscious of how we spend our time. So like Neptune in the 6th, what are we doing? Are we checking out a little bit? Are we like sucked into the screen all the time? Are we not here? But then again, it could have that positive effect of be here now, that more spiritual side. So I think that sometimes the highest form of Neptune is a more spiritual way of doing things. So being conscious of your time, or like writing down what you spend all your time doing, and like really focusing on time, the concept of time and how much time you want to be spending on certain things, and infusing your time with more spiritual things is the highest way to go here. The lowest way to go is not doing that. And sometimes it can be just that something that is a fun interest that's like not real takes a priority. Like I think of like fantasy football, or like I don't know, stuff like that, that's like maybe even like watching tarot readings on YouTube or something, where it's like it's not real, but it's cool. like it's fun if you know it's not really like, if you know it's just a reading, or you know it's just a fantasy, like it's not really your team, when you're doing fantasy football, or like even when you're watching a game or something, it's like it's those people doing it, it's not you, right? So it's almost like connecting to things that we spend our time with that's like not related to our own lives, that's a little removed from our lives. Okay, so then again, the other positive things here are going to be heightened compassion. Some Scorpios might be getting into a flow state. You might be doing things that are undefined with your time. You might just let yourself have more free time, and that feeling of peace and ease around, I have all the time in the world, might be coming up here too. And that actually feels like really positive too. It's also the 5th house ruler in the 6th. So that makes me feel like for some Scorpios, it might be just bringing joy to your day-to-day routine, adding super vibey lights to your kitchen, so when you do the dishes, you get to see them, or listening to the coolest music while you're working or something, where it can bring that ease and fun into the day-to-day things you're already doing. So that's another thing I see for Scorpios. Going on now to our Sagittariuses. Let me know, Scorpios, if that resonated. And then we have Sag. So for Sagittarius, Neptune in Aries is going to be in your 5th house of fun. This can be good for the love life, okay? It can be good for your sex life, because Neptune makes it easier. So is Neptune going to make you easier? I don't know. I don't know, Sagittarius. I must call you Scorpio. I don't know. If you have a Sagittarius sun, moon, or rising that's between like 0 and 5 degrees, you are probably going to become very Neptunian. It's going to be a very strong influence. But for some Sages, this could actually be your creativity that becomes easier. Now, it goes both ways though, because could it be easier to be more creative? Yes. Could it be easier to be? Yes. Could it be easier to forget the shit you created and go start some new creation? It's like you could be painting one week, doing a music class the next week, playing piano the next week. And even though that might sound fun, in 14 years, you're not going to have anything to show for it if you do it like that. So you could go on this fun meandering journey of play and creativity and self-expression that doesn't have to be defined. Or you can find yourself, if you already have a certain hobby or a certain creative passion, this is where I would say watch out a little bit that you don't forget about it and just it'll slowly slip away from you. So the thing is if you know that, you can counter that and just know that if you're good at something creative already, or you have a creative thing you like to do, then now is the time, if you want to keep it, to keep making yourself come back to it. Really build it into your routine. I think this one can still be positive, especially for like sex, you know, for Sagittarius. Neptune in the 5th house can be like you want your dating and your sex life to be easy. Okay, you don't want it to be hard. You don't want the person to be difficult or hard to get. It would be ideal if they just come to you and show up. Because Neptune does have that kind of effect where it's like, I don't want to do anything. I just want it to be easy. But I'm trying to think of anything else that we could say about that. If you're a Sagittarius who feels like you don't have enough fun, your life is too weighed down by certain burdens, or you haven't just had enough fun lately, Neptune in the 5th could help make it easier to do things you enjoy, make it easier to do things that are really pleasurable to you. Whereas when Neptune was going through that 4th house for you, that's where it has been. Maybe it was more about having some dream with where you want to live, but like not being able to put the steps in to make it happen. If that's the case, or some dreams about your house or your home that you're like, oh, I wish it could be like this, but you've been in that mode of just wishing about it and just, you know, like, I wish I lived in a bigger place with natural light, with plants or whatever, and just wishing. Then Neptune getting out of that 4th house can help you be more like, okay, now we're going to take all those things Neptune brought us into inspiration about, and we're going to achieve something. We're going to accomplish something. So Neptune can actually help by going into the 5th house, and it'll be here until October, to really take the steps you want to take to have the home you want to have. Okay, so that can be a positive. And I still think Neptune in the 5th can be cool. It can be making your life related to pleasure more easy, more fun, more going to the arcade, more going to see shows that have like cool lights, more interesting music that like takes you to another world. More ease. You know, it's like, even if you like to sing, it's like, it might be easier to find the notes, or it might just flow more, you know? And so that would be the positive potential with Neptune in the 5th, is the ability to get into a flow state related to something creative, something where you're making. Now, you might make spreadsheets, right? You might make something that isn't art or music, but it still has a creative component to it. Okay. So I don't care if you make web pages, or if you write code, or if you create good experiences for clients, or, you just make a nice vibe wherever you go. Whatever you make in life, right? Whatever you bring into being on a daily basis has the potential to you get into a flow state with it. Okay, so that's the positive here. Now, the fact that Neptune is the 4th house ruler makes me feel like emotions could influence what you enjoy doing for fun, or it could influence your creative passion. So it's like, if you're dancing, it's your feelings that motivate you to dance. You're dancing out the emotions. If you're singing based on your feelings, basically, with Neptune ruling your 4th house in the 5th house. That's not a bad thing. Or if you're writing music, or if you're writing a book, there's some kind of emotional driving force here. So I think that's a positive thing. I think for Sagittariuses who want to share their feelings with people more, this can also help with that because Neptune can make it easier to express how you feel being the fourth house, Neptune being in the fifth house, but it's also Aries, right? Which is a masculine sign. And it's about just like Aries really to me is that instinctual oomph of something, right? And it's that instinctual oomph of feelings. So yeah, if that's something Sagittarius wants to do is express how they feel more, then this transit will help with that. Overall, how to work with Neptune going through that fifth house is get into your flow state, get creative, make things, enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself and doing things where time disappears. That is really what it feels like Sagittarius might be doing. Okay, let's go on now to Capricorns. All right. Capricorns have Neptune entering the fourth house of home, emotional foundations, and your house. So Neptune was in your third house, and it could have made it harder to communicate, actually. So if you had confusion related to communication, especially in the last year or so being stronger, Neptune entering the fourth house might help. Now, if you did not have communication confusion, that's fine. That's good. We're going to be happy about that. Neptune might start influencing that fourth house by making it easier for you to connect with how you feel. That could be good or bad, depending on what your feelings are. But if you are a Capricorn who wants to do any kind of therapy, who wants to get to root causes of things that happened in childhood and resolve them, wants to feel better in your own skin for any reason, that Neptune in the fourth can support a quest of self-understanding, but it can have a downside. And the downside of Neptune in the fourth can be something called navel gazing, which is where you are maybe like I am sometimes, and you just do personality test after personality test, after astrology, after numerology, after thing, after thing, after thing, to understand yourself to the point where it's like you're not doing anything else. You could just spend all your time and energy being like, okay, what else can I learn about me? Right? And so that's the downside of Neptune in the fourth. It makes it very easy to go into the rabbit hole of self-development, but that can be just like anything. A little bit is the right medicine, and too much can be, not medicine anymore. It's not medicine anymore when we're like always psychoanalyzing ourselves and we won't even do stuff because we're like, no, I need to read this book on therapy again. Although if you are doing that stuff, I'm not trying to complain. I definitely see the value of self-understanding, and I think we live in a world where that is not given enough credence. When you understand your emotional world, you can navigate the physical world much better. So Neptune in the fourth can help make it easier to go down that rabbit hole of what do I feel? So we can use that for our benefit by doing those kind of activities, and Neptune will make it easier to, go into that place of like, what are my feelings about this? What's aligned for me? And what else does Neptune do in the fourth house? Well, we can think of your actual house. Neptune can make you feel connected to the vision of what you want your actual house to be, where you want it to be, where you want to live, just the higher ideal. But it is not always easy to make it happen because Neptune in the fourth can give you almost like this sense of like, I'd rather be somewhere else, but I don't know where. And this will probably not be the whole 14 years. As a matter of fact, it might just be the last year of this transit. You might not even be feeling that energy yet. But if you feel at all like, oh, this longing, this longing to be in a different place, living somewhere else, to be planting your roots in a different situation, even if it's down the street, man, even if it's in another neighborhood, The way to work with Neptune going through this fourth house is to let it help you connect to the inspiration and the ideal, but don't let it make you check out of the house you're in. You know, it's like you can be so, this is the negative side of Neptune, is being so, so in the vision that you're not even here. So checked out of reality that you're not right here. It's like you're having dinner with someone and you're on your phone playing a game the whole time. And it's like, I'm not saying I don't do all this shit that I say in my videos. I'm not saying you guys have to be perfect out here. But that's like, you know, that's the downside of Neptune in the fourth, would be feeling it's like you're so far away, but you're right there. That's the thing about Neptune that I feel like people don't talk about, is like the numbing effect of Neptune. Or think about when a person is on anesthesia, like the videos of people who get their wisdom teeth removed and they're like, are you my boyfriend or whatever, you know? It's like that, but like that on occasion where you're like, yeah, it was one day, fine. Days and days and days of that metaphor in your life where you are not even there in your emotions. That's not what we want. That's not how we want to be. We want to be grounded in our emotions. Okay. So don't check out of your current house because you have a hope and a dream for a new one. And don't check out of your emotions because you wish you felt a certain way. That would be the downside of Neptune, is like trying to treat the emotional pain instead of actually let that Neptune be the anesthetic that guides you into the root cause and heal it. You know, Neptune does rule actually, well, it doesn't rule dentistry, but it rules like the Novocaine kind of thing, right? So it's like, we don't want to like if you have a cavity, you don't just use the Novocaine and then you go about your business. You use the Novocaine so they can take it out, right? So that's the metaphor here, Capricorns, is Neptune's providing the Novocaine in your emotional foundation in your home, but like you need to still get to the cavity. So like if you have ants in your house or something, or you have mold or something, Neptune might make it easier for you to visualize a house without mold or a house without ants, but like you want to also treat the root cause at the same time. Neptune will have us sort of be really easily removed from the root cause, or really easily distract ourselves where we get uncomfortable. And the reason I'm going off on this for you guys is I'm not accusing you of doing this, because it's the fourth house. This is how you feel. So you might feel more checked out of reality during this time. You might have reasons for that. But that's just one possible thing. I think there's also a potential for connection to family, being easier to connect to family, because the fourth house is also family, your hometown, the place you were born, the place you were raised. Neptune here could have you being nostalgic about it. There could be something to be nostalgic about, and that can be positive, or it can be challenging depending on the case, right? But do you want to connect with people in your hometown more? Neptune might make that easier. But also, like for people with Neptune in the fourth natally, this can be hard because sometimes their memory of their family is not real, right? Sometimes they have like, and usually I would say, not always, but sometimes you meet people and someone is like so mean to them, and like their mom or their dad or someone, and they're just like, I love my dad, he's the best guy in the whole world. And you're like, what? But you can't just tell them no, they're not, right? You can't really help someone in that situation. So that is another potential downside of Neptune in the fourth, is that we're going to idealize things from our childhood that maybe they weren't ideal, but we're romanticizing it. And sometimes we do that for our own psychological protection. So I'm not even going to complain about that, but there might be that theme can show up for some Capricorns, and it might not be you. It might be someone in your family. Someone in your family could be Neptunian. So that's usually mom or dad in the fourth house. It's not usually cousins, aunts, or uncles, but because Neptune rules the third, there might be a blending here of maybe one or more family members smoking a lot of weed or taking a lot of pills or doing something that's checking them out from reality more. Or maybe they get all spiritual and start doing Zen Buddhism, right? So for some Capricorns, that Neptune transit will describe, especially a sibling or a mom or a dad, and their experience of becoming more like Neptune, becoming more of a pot smoker, becoming more easygoing, letting down their walls. And that, again, everything can have good or bad things. And this could also bring the potential of like having some kind of spiritual connection with a parent or something. So there could be positive stuff there too, for sure. So overall for Capricorns, Neptune in the fourth house is going to be, there's an ease to connect with your emotions. That could become too easy. Don't get stuck in your emotions here. Don't get stuck in what it feels like to read up on all your different personality profile kind of a thing. Don't like get obsessed with self-development to the point where it doesn't help you. It's an escape. That's the thing to watch out for here. And also with Neptune in the fourth, though, there can be some true healing, as long as, just like going to the dentist, when you use the Novocaine, there's actually a thing that you're going to treat or correct, right? And so apply that metaphor to your emotional foundation, as far as there's definitely a possibility for Capricorns during this time to use things like hypnotherapy or QHHT or some other kind of subconscious, especially support or something like that, to help you to get to the root cause of a thing and like feel it to heal it, sort of a thing. This is not advice in any way on psychological advice. You need to go to the appropriate people for that. So overall, though, I think Neptune in the fourth can have positive influence on your emotions. Emotions can take more of a flow state, and you can be more connected to the ideal home or house you want to live in as well. So that's what I have for Capricorns. Let me know if that resonated. And we're going on now to Aquariuses. All right. Let me get here. Aquarius, we have the Neptune entering Aries, going into your third house. So this is, I think, going to be good for Aquariuses. I don't love Neptune being in the second because Neptune can dissolve your money. And you know how it dissolves your money? It makes you not want to think about it. So that has been the influence for 14 years. Does it mean you're destitute now? No, it doesn't have to be that strong of an influence when it's over 14 whole years. But if you've had periods during the last 14 years, periods of time where you couldn't deal with the money thing, or you ran out of money because you weren't thinking about it or something like that, this is going to be hopefully a help, right? Because Neptune connects us with the ideal of what we want to achieve financially. So you're really in touch with like the dream of how much money you want to make someday. But it's not like you can't take steps forward, but Neptune doesn't help with that part. Neptune only puts you in touch with the vision, and it makes it a little harder to figure out what the next steps are. So you might actually find you feel relief or clarity related to your next steps when it comes to your finances. When Neptune moves into Aries, keep in mind it's going to go back in October for a little bit, and then it'll come back into Aries again. But I do think that overall this can be a more grounding, stabilizing influence for our Aquariuses. I also think that Neptune in the third could make you more inspired, especially if you like to write anything, whether that be journaling or writing music or writing anything at all that a person could write. The third house is the act of writing. Neptune in the third will make the desire to write. It doesn't make the desire stronger, actually, but you can get in a flow state when you're writing, or you can find that you're like, you just journal things out, and it just, once you start writing, it comes really easily. But also with Neptune in the third, you can forget to do it because you just forget, like you forget to focus on it. So if you're a writer, or if you liked writing up until now, Neptune here might make you not think about it. You can also be not wanting to think about your car, or really like want a new car, but you don't know how to get one, or, really in touch with like the kind of car you want to drive, and just thinking about like, oh, I'd love to have this car, but you might not necessarily feel that motivated to go out and get that car. You might just like dreaming about it. That's kind of what Neptune can do. Neptune in the third can affect your sibling relationships. If you don't have a sibling, this part's not for you. But it could be describing what your sibling is doing. Because Neptune rules your money house, you could be giving money to your sibling during this time. You could be financially supporting them. your money or your things could influence your sibling relationship. Your money or your things could influence your car, your money. You could buy a car during the next 14 years, but that's a very general thing. So I don't even want to say that because it's like, oh, wow. Who doesn't buy a car every 14 years, you know? It's kind of like everyone. But anyway, you could buy your dream car in the next 14 years or a car that you just idolized or idealized, you know? Neptune, how could Neptune be the sibling? Well, it could be that the sibling is becoming more Neptunian. One of your siblings gets spiritual. Your siblings are, maybe they slowly slip away in the sense that you're not in contact with them as much as you used to be. And you kind of, have a season of time where you and your siblings just aren't really as super close as you were before. That could be part of it. What else? The third house is how we communicate too. So with Neptune in the third house, you could find that your communication style is a little less direct. Now with Aries on the third, sometimes that can be too direct for people anyway, right? Like sometimes the Aries on the third, you will initiate the conversation. You will say what you want to say and you will direct it into the way you want it to go, unless you have other things happening there in the third or other things happening to Mars in your chart. Like if Mars is with Saturn, it's not going to be like that. But then with Neptune here, it makes it a little more windy, right? So you might have windier conversations that kind of go every which way. You might start conversations and they end up totally in a different way. You may find your method of conversating, your method of speaking becomes a little bit more loosey-goosey and not quite so harsh. With Aries, it's like, I want to challenge you. I want to argue with you. I'm not saying all Aquariuses want to argue, but you probably wouldn't be afraid to just say the truth to someone, to cut through the bullshit. That's the good thing Aries does, is cuts through the bullshit and is like, bam, and goes right to the point. But with Neptune here, it's going to soften this a little bit. So I think that can probably be a balancing effect for most Aquariuses out there, where Neptune is just going to soften that conversation. You could find that you want to be more interested in something like nonviolent communication, where that compassionate influence of Neptune in the third makes you want to consider how your communication is coming across and you want to study it and like be better. That could be a thing. You could have, what else with Neptune here? There was something else about siblings and I lost it. Oh, well, it's your local environment, it's your neighborhood. So some Aquariuses could find there's more hippy dippy places in your neighborhood. Maybe there's more gluten-free restaurants. Maybe there's more hookah bars. I don't think that's hippy dippy, but it's kind of what I think of when I think of Neptune. It's like the literal wall of smoke, but it's like a vibe, or like loungy places, or like, let me think of what else Neptune could do. There could be more homeless people in your neighborhood, or like a homeless shelter, or more things in your local place that are about helping others or being compassionate toward others. This was the other thing I wanted to say. You could have more compassion toward your own siblings, your aunts or uncles. Maybe because some of them are dealing with something, you could just find yourself having more compassion for those people in your life during this time. Yeah, that could be another thing. So overall, the good thing for Aquarius is with this Neptune transit is that if Neptune was fucking up your money, if it was having that influence of you not paying attention to it or slipping away, it's going to not have that effect. Neptune will not be doing that. Neptune will not be having that influence. Another good thing about Neptune in the third is that the potential downsides of Neptune are minimized. They don't have as much power because the third house is not as strong. So Neptune isn't getting as much strength here. So if the energy of Neptune has been messing with you or making you, if there's been things that you haven't been focusing on that you want to focus on, especially related to finances or building your skills or your actual possessions, Neptune being in the third, that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, for the most part, is going to be a lot quieter for Aquariuses during this transit. So that's what I have for you guys. Be sure to watch your sun, moon, and rising. Check out my video on Neptune in the houses if you want that info. And we're going on now to Pisces. You can watch your sun, moon, and rising on all of these as always. Okay, yes, we are going to Pisces. Pisces. Neptune's getting out of your first house. So, there's good and bad here. All right, there's good and bad here. I don't love Neptune in the second usually because Neptune represents, second house is your money. Neptune is, I don't want to think about it. I want to dream about it. I want to do it. That's what Neptune does. So we don't want that in our money house. We don't want that. So that, what does that mean? How do you work with this transit if it's going to have that influence? Well, one thing that some Pisces might find is that their work becomes more spiritual, more compassionate, more open. I almost get the metaphor of people who start, I met a lot of people who start doing readings by donation, right? And the person will just donate whatever. And it just lowers the barrier to entry. Nobody says no to that. They just donate what they want to donate. You get the experience, you get money. And over time, you know, you should get ideally more money, right? I started doing astrology readings by donation actually back in the day. And that just reminds me of that time. But so it's that spiritual, compassionate combining with finances. But for some people, it may not be like that. It may be that you're doing some spiritual practice or you have a spiritual skill that now you're monetizing or doing some kind of work that involves compassion or helping people who are suffering or, you know, sickness and healing, those topics. Sickness and recovery, you know, like doctors or nurses or anything like that. And so that's one possibility is that Neptune makes your finances more related to those things. You could have more compassion for poor people right now. You know, during the Neptune transit, whatever Neptune transits, you can have more compassion for the people suffering in that house, people suffering from not having enough money. So does that mean you're going to give it all to them? Maybe some of you will, maybe some of you won't. Let's talk about what Neptune getting out of Pisces does, because I think it might have a clarifying effect. Because when Neptune is in your sign, you already are ruled by Pisces, right? So you already have some tendency to live life based on how you feel and follow your intuition. Neptune here can make it a little more than you need, though. Harder to make decisions based on facts. You know, harder to go forward based on what makes sense. Harder to be really prepared for the next steps and plan things out. A lot easier to just go with the flow, man. And when Neptune is in the first house, all you want to do is go with the flow. So having it go into your second might have like a bit of a stabilizing influence. It's kind of like when you are on a boat and it's rocking back and forth and then you get off the boat. It's like now you're stabilized, right? Now it takes a minute to actually, if you've been on a boat that's really rocking and you get off, it feels like the ground is moving. You know what I mean? So this few days here, when Neptune enters Aries, you might have this metaphorical feeling like the ground is moving, like you've been in this sort of like moving with life kind of energy, of like flowing with life where things haven't been solid. And I don't mean like you haven't been paying your rent kind of solid, but like where you're maybe picking up more on the emotions of other people than you normally would. And that just being an influence that makes you feel more like I'm going with the flow. But you have so much of that already that it's like when Neptune gets into the second house, you might feel like I'm still going with the flow, but not too much anymore. You know, it might really just be like that. We're like, also, Neptune in the first will be a time of identity shift. You know, it'll be a time where who you thought you were, and this would be a nice exercise actually for Pisces to do. And I'm going to actually move the chart to go back to, I didn't do this for anyone else, just you Pisces. But I think it's totally worth it to consider what you were, who were you? when Neptune entered Pisces in 2011 and 2012. Wait. Yeah. End of 2012. Who were you? What was your identity? And what is your identity now? They're going to be different. How much did you change in that time? And I know it's a long time, but this is what Neptune did to you. No, I'm just kidding. This is how our personality, our identity Neptune can really make it so malleable. Now, if you feel like, oh, I didn't change all the things I wanted to, well, we get a little bit more. Neptune dips back into Pisces again in October. So if there's anything else from that person you used to be back in 2011 and 2012 to now that you're like, oh yeah, I changed, but like, sometimes we don't like how we change though, you know? Sometimes we become less of something that we thought was good about ourselves. But there is still a little more time to work with this energy. And of course, remember, you can manifest whatever at any time. It's just the planets might help it go in a certain direction. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like you just catch the wave that's going the direction you want to go when it's going that way. So the whole point in that rant is, who are you now, Pisces? I think that if someone asked you that in the middle of this transit or even in the last couple years, you might not be able to give them a very clear answer, because when you're in the middle of the flow, you don't always know how to identify it. When you're the butterfly in the fucking cocoon, you're just like, and someone's like, hey, what do you do? And you're like, I'm kind of in a cocoon right now. I don't know what I do. I'm becoming this, but I don't know if it's going to work. And can you get back to me in a few years? You know, it's like, of course I'm exaggerating here, but to whatever degree you have felt that is now to the degree that you might feel like, okay, I am this person now. My identity is now, I can describe it. I can put words to it. I can say I started out here and then I went here and now I went there, and there was an arc to the story, and that aspect of my story now has a resolution to it. But Neptune in the second can make you more inspired financially, but it can make it harder to do the things you want to do. So it's like a good time not to be deceived, actually. I would actually watch out for that. Just a little bit when it comes to what you're purchasing. While Neptune is in Aries, that's 14 years. But it's not like every way you turn, someone's going to scam you. But it is what, like, I've done this where I bought like coaching programs that were really fucking expensive and later was like, I wish I hadn't bought that. But I did learn that, like, you can't buy something really expensive like that and hope it's going to change you. You have to kind of read it and see, does it have what you want on there? And sometimes I deal with this with clients a little bit where they'll buy and they think it's going to be totally different than what it is. And I'm like, where'd you get that from? And they just thought that. You can't just think what you're buying is going to be what you want it to be. You have to read the fucking description of the product or the service. Like, I'm sorry, I'm in a mood right now, Pisces. And I don't think this is you guys, but it's like that lesson might be coming up here with Neptune in the second house of money doesn't get to be what you hope it is. It is what it actually is. Or that when you're purchasing something for the purpose, especially for the purpose of like a psychological change, when only you can make that change. You just believed these people that told you maybe that, like, just join our program and you're going to magically you know, anything that's like magically one step, something that should be a million steps, you know, it's like, why do we get deceived? Because we want to believe that. Why do we want to believe that if we buy this $3,000 coaching program, we'll have a brand new business? Well, because we don't know how to do it. And we think that if we just give our money to someone else, then we will magically poof, know how to do it. But the reality is, I'm going on a tangent here, but just take what resonates, Pisces. It's like, I was listening to a podcast the other day on this with like Personal development is like this a lot, where it's like, oh yeah, get my $3,000, $20,000 program on how to have better habits. And it's like, you just need to have better habits. Like, no one can do that for you. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of this stuff in that space, even in the spiritual space, it's like a reading is just going to be a reading. And I've had times where I was like, I got a reading and I got disappointed because I thought that reading was going to be my ticket to another life. And it's like, that is not realistic to expect that from one thing. So I know I'm going off on this, but for Pisces, that's the challenge of Neptune in the second, is we want to believe the lie. We want to believe the lie that if we just give our money to someone, we're going to poof, become a different person. Why do we want to do that? Because the idea of waking up at 6 a.m. without paying someone else to help you do it, it doesn't feel magical. It's boring and it's fucking hard. And we have to just show up differently every single day. And sometimes that's how people get deceived. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways people get deceived financially, is by believing in the illusion that the solution is going to come this other way, not the way it's really going to come. Okay, let me try to rein this in a little bit and get a little more focused here. Sorry, Pisces, I'm getting to the end. I want to think about ways that Neptune could be good in that second house. Is it possible some Pisces out there might do more spiritual work or compassionate work? Yeah. Is it possible that you are working with the homeless or doing something else where you are in your life somehow connected to people who are less fortunate than you financially? Yes. Is it possible that your actions can contribute to your money? Yes, because Neptune rules your first house of you, and it's in the second house. So you contribute to your own financial well-being. Good job, Pisces. You can make your financial situation better during this time. You are just a little more susceptible to these get-rich-quick schemes that promise you things that aren't real. So don't fall for that. That's all you have to do, is not fall for it. And what can Neptune do? That's the thing that I'm trying not to just predict negatively, is like, Neptune can dissolve your money. But if it does dissolve your money, it's because you weren't paying attention to it. Because you went into the store, you bought a bunch of shit, and you didn't think about how much it cost, and it was actually $200 and you only had 20. You know what I mean? So that's what Neptune will do. It will make us distracted. It will make us not want to deal with it. So when Neptune is going through our second house, what we do to mitigate that is we force ourselves to deal with it. We focus on how much we're spending. That's really all it takes. So it doesn't have to be some horrible thing here. And I think there is a possibility here where Neptune can make it easier, could make money easier. It will definitely make you more interested in making money in a way that is easier for you, in some way, shape, or form. So that could be because you're doing stuff you naturally like to do. You're doing stuff you're good at. You find a way to get paid more for the same thing. You're going to be wanting to be connected to, like, having your finances be more inspiring. But you just got to make sure you're focusing on it, and you don't forget to pay your bills, or you don't forget to, do the important things financially. I'm really trying to, like, make this more positive, because I don't want to leave you with just Neptune's going to take all your money. It doesn't have to. Neptune can put you in touch with how you want to be making money if you are not already in touch with it. I would say visualizing. If you're not someone who visualizes the amount of money you want to be making or the things that you want to be doing to get paid for, I would say trying that activity during this transit might be more productive. because the Neptune's there. Some Pisces are going to just start doing energy work for a living, or they're going to start doing that on the side. But it won't be clear. You'll just have to kind of trust. You might have some kind of experience during this time with money where you just have to trust and you don't know what's going to happen, and you can't proceed by getting all the facts or getting all the information. You can only proceed by taking the next step. It's like being on a path at night and there's just a flashlight, right? And you can only just shine the light on the step in front of you. And then you have to take that step, and then you have to move the light to the next step, and you can't see the whole way. You have no idea what's coming. And the fact that it's the dark makes it scarier because we can't see what it is. So Pisces might have this kind of experience in their financial life where they're not clear. There's an unclear energy here of like, I don't know what the next step is going to be. And I would say that's stronger right now at the time of filming this video, as Mars is still in Cancer. And I will say, I'm going to go ahead for you guys a little bit. I will say maybe in March, end of April, maybe something will shift there on the finances side of thing. And I know this was all about money, but really the second house is just money. Like that's all it is. It's your money, what you have and what you own. Oh, that's another thing that Pisces might do actually here is Pisces might become minimalistic. I moved the chart so it's not right anymore. But you might become more minimalistic. Why? Because Neptune dissolves, Pisces dissolves, right? So it's like, what's it going to dissolve in the second house? Your stuff. I'm trying to put it back, but it's not working. It's going to dissolve your stuff. But that could be you. That could be you being like, I don't want all this stuff. I want to get rid of it. That could be you being like Marie Kondo and just like, does this bring me joy? No, get rid of it. That could be you consciously choosing to spiritualize your life in a way through minimalism, right? Minimalism can be kind of a mainstream thing, but it can also be more of a spiritual thing of like when we believe everything has energy and we want to clear our energy. I know every time I clean, it's just like the energy shifts. So like deciding to clear our energy out by clearing out our things, deciding to live more consciously by only keeping the things we really need, that kind of stuff can be going on here. So Pisces could be doing that and embodying more spiritual principles when it comes to what things you have and what things you own. You could be collecting more spiritual things. You could be buying like the little figurines of your favorite Buddha or your favorite goddess or something, or you could, you can be buying things that have more of a spiritual significance to you, whether it be like a spiritual text, a spiritual book, or even like, I don't know, even like a dream catcher, right? Where they wanted to catch the bad dreams kind of a thing, like anything like that, where it's infusing your beliefs into the things that you have and the things that you own. And maybe like even because Neptune has that dissolving effect, you might get rid of stuff that has ties to the past that you don't want to keep carrying around. So that would be a really good activity to do to kind of honor the welcoming of this transit if you want to work with it as well. So that is what I have for Pisces. I'm going to check the comments. For anyone just joining, I do have a sale going on. Today is the last day. If you want to get that, click the link in the chat. There's a link pinned to the top of the chat, and there is a link in the description. So, okay, yeah, Neptune in the first was destabilizing. Oh, no. Oh, well, I'm glad you are, you did not unalive anyone. Angela is saying, Sag rising, thank you for the insight. You don't buy a car because you're blind? Oh, Dolly doesn't want to give away all your money. You don't have to. You certainly don't have to. Butterfly is saying my daughter is a Pisces sun and this sounds like her. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think that's good. That is good for the comments. So yes, like I said, there is that reading sale. You can get in on it. Also, I do have a video on Neptune through the houses. So if you like Neptune, you want to know more about Neptune, you can check that video out. I also recently did videos on the eclipses, the solar, which just happened like today, and the lunar that happened a couple weeks ago. They are still accurate. So you can still watch both of them for what is ending and what is coming into your life in the next 6 months. Eclipses are valid for 6 months until the next eclipse. So yeah, lots of content for you guys to binge watch. And as always, thank you all for the support of this channel, for all the things that you do, for those of you who book readings, for those of you who have purchased the courses, who come onto the live readings and get readings. Everything you guys do helps. So thank you for your support, and I will see you beautiful souls in the next video.